Welcome, and thanks for joining me on the Ultimate 180 podcast, where we help you pull the ultimate 180-degree life change to live your life beyond all your expectations. I'm Christina Walker, the host of the Ultimate 180 podcast, and I am honored to introduce the always entertaining, super kind human, truly inspiring Dr. Stephan Cohen. Welcome, Stephan. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thanks. The check is in the mail for that introduction. Thank you very much. I'll be leaving now.
Well, thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.
Anyway, so let me tell you. Okay, so I want to tell the listeners just a little bit about you. So don't be embarrassed, because it's always fun to hear about yourself.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
It's always fun. He's going to start glowing. Anyways, he is an optometrist here in Scottsdale, Arizona, but he's not just any doctor. He is a nationally and internationally recognized multi-award winning physician. And I'm just going to pump you up a little bit more and give you a few of his achievements so you really understand how amazing this man is. So your practice has been selected as one of the top 10 eye clinics in Arizona 8 times in the Arizona Business Journal. You've ranked as the number one optometrist in Arizona in the top 10 in the U.S. in 2014. And each year since 2015, you received the Spectrum Award as the number one eye doctor for Scottsdale for 10 years running.
Did you include the fact that there's only one eye doctor in Scottsdale? And that's okay.
They can Google that.
Okay.
You've also been published in, professional journals worldwide. You were chairman of the board of the, let me make sure I don't say this wrong, Sjogren's Disease Foundation.
Yes.
I got it. All right, good. I've seen it, and then I went to pronounce it, and I thought, I don't know how to pronounce that. You're on the national advisory panel to several pharmaceutical and contact lens companies, and the list goes on as far as your profession. And then outside of that, you're also very active in the community, and you've been the past president of the Rotary Club. You've even had starring lead roles in over a dozen award-winning theater productions. Amazing.
That concludes our discussion for the day.
See how people love hearing about themselves? It is a little awkward. Anyways, I'm telling you that all for a reason, because the reason we're here to get today is actually what fascinates me the most about you is that all of that success, all of the wonderful things that you've done in your past and the person that you are now, you actually live your entire life as being on the other side of the ultimate 180, right? It's like lots of human beings want to be on the other side of this 180. They want to be living their dream. And when we sat and talked the other day, you said to me that you have been in practice for over 40 years, and it still feels like you haven't worked a day in your life. And to me, that's like the whole purpose of pulling a 180, right? It's to live the way that you live and living your dream. Is that true?
Absolutely. And in no way am I a workaholic. I love the end of the workday. I love my weekends. But I also don't wake up Monday morning saying, oh, no, it's Monday. I wake up saying, it's Monday, go to work, and anticipate what the day might be like and what I'm looking forward to. The interesting thing I think that lends itself to that is to understand why you wake up in the morning.
Yes.
And Simon Sinek, who many people probably read about, he wrote Start With Why, and he also has his golden circles. And in his description, what he talks about is the outer circle. Instead of going from the inner circle outward, he goes from the outside in, is what do you do? Okay, so for me, I'm an eye doctor. How do you do it? Well, I have a bunch of equipment. I do a bunch of tests and figure out how to help people see better. Why do you do it? And when I read about that, I had a moment of panic because I had no clue what my why was. And very quickly...
you were already an eye doctor.
This is probably in the last 10 years.
Okay.
So I had already been doing things, but never gave any thought to what it is that motivates me to wake up in the morning. And it very quickly came to mind. Mine is no more noble than anyone else. I'm not Mother Teresa sitting here. But I know that what motivates me, where I get that thrill, is having a positive impact on somebody else's life. And that could be a patient, that could be a coworker, it could be a family member, friend, that really is the part, and it's making those connections. So I knew my practice had always been relationship driven. I still have my very first patient in practice from October of 1985.
That's incredible.
And we joke now because I have no plans to retire, although I get the question every single day.
I hope you don't.
Well, thank you.
He's my eye doctor too.
But I get the question regularly, and typically when they follow it up with it, please don't. But when she comes in now, I say, wouldn't it be great? You take care of yourself, I'll take care of myself. I have no timetable for this, but wouldn't it be great if you wound up being my last patient in practice, if we can arrange that? And I thought that would tie such a wonderful ribbon around things.
It would. The very last appointment on the very last day.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be so
to
cool.
be the same person that was the very first person
I love it.
on my very first day. So I'm hoping we might be able to do that, although I have no timetable for it. But I realized that that's what drives me. And what was interesting is when that crystallized, I was able to look back over my career and realized I'd actually lived that. I wasn't aware of it. Didn't have it identified, but I could chart my career and see that had been consistent with the way I conducted myself. Then the nice thing is it allowed me to be more purposeful going forward since that time to make sure any considerations, decisions, options were reflected against, does this fit my why? And where I knew that it was resonating is that I have never gone home. I have to have a shout out to my wife, Marcy. She won't forgive me if I don't mention her.
Yay.
Because she said to me, you're being interviewed. Are you there to talk about me? And I said, of course, what else is there? But I've never gone home and said, I nailed a diagnosis today or I nailed a treatment. I go home all the time and say, I had the most interesting conversation today. I had the most touching conversation. I had the funniest thing happen. Whatever she's doing, she stops, she says, tell me.
Oh, I love
It's really nice. Can I share probably the quintessential one of a conversation that I had? I'll try to say it briefly.
Please do.
Many, many years ago, probably 25 years ago, I saw a patient for the first time, an elderly gentleman who was retired. So whatever he did in his career was not germane to why he was there. He could have been an accountant in front of a computer all day. It didn't matter. He's not doing that anymore. But just out of interest, I said, what did you do before you retired? He said, well, I was in the military. And I said, well, thank you. I said, where were you? He said, most of my career is in San Antonio, Texas. And he was about that age range. And I said, do I ask? Do I not ask? And I said, by any chance, did you see any active duty in your military career? And he paused for a second, nodded his head and said, funny you should mention that. I was in the Naval Shipyard 8 o'clock in the morning, December 7th, 1941. Oh, and my shift ended. I look up, I see these planes going by and I think, where are they going? And then all hell breaks loose. And he goes on to describe it. He was there.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
At one point, I'm sitting, my jaw's probably down around my knees. And he caught himself getting more wrapped up in telling the story. And he stopped and said, wow, you don't want to listen to the ramblings of an old man. I said, no, that's okay.
Absolutely,
that's okay.
I do.
But this is like 25 years ago. And I've never forgotten that moment. If it were not for that question, first, my life was enriched. It appeared that there was an infamous moment in our history, but he was eager to talk about it.
I bet.
But also the fact that I probably would never have remembered his visit were not for that question.
True.
And it fit again back to my why, is that, having those connections, those relationships. And I've had lots of stories of things that people have shared that in the sharing, I was looking at it and thinking, how blessed am I that I come in and my job is to ask people which is better, one or two. And I never get the answer, by the way. But
we sit there. Can you do that again?
Yeah,
one or two?
Yeah, my favorite is when they say no.
No.
But that's what it appears, and again, that's what I do. But it's not why I do it.
Why you do
and
it.
why I do it, even with meeting you, is the conversation that we got into that
you even took your whole lunch hour talking to me. I was so amazed. I'm like, why is he still sitting here with me? This is amazing.
I found you to be absolutely fascinating, and I love what you're doing with your program and your philosophies and how you're trying to help people who are looking either at business challenges or business opportunities. So I was really looking forward to this opportunity. I was flattered when you asked me to come and meet with you.
Well, I was equally as flattered that you immediately said yes, because you shared with me this story, and it goes back to you not even recognizing your why and what fills you up. Is you said when you when you were in school, becoming a doctor. Share with me Well, I'm not even going to mess it up. You share with me. You know the story I'm talking about. I think it's super cool.
There's so many things that I'm passionate about. I love to cook. I love to garden. I love theater. You mentioned I've been in plays. The one thing I can't do though is sing. Puberty took care of that. But I love music. And I had the opportunity, I was in college, to get involved in producing concerts down at the University of Arizona. And we did shows with Billy Joel, did shows with the Beach Boys, Fleetwood Mac. As a matter of fact, we did one in the football stadium at the U of A in August of '77 with Fleetwood Mac, Kenny Loggins, and the Marshall Tucker Band that raised $350,000 for the Heart Association.
Wow.
That was during their Rumors tour, which was the big album that they exploded after that. But in doing that, a lot of times during the day, I'd have managers, road managers, people ask, you looking for a job after you graduate? I said, no, I'm a pre-med student. And they said, well, what are you doing here? I said, because I'd want to be like every other pre-med student. And the part that I've realized is that skills can be trained.
Right.
Life experiences that fulfill, that broaden horizons, that allow you to explore other things can be. And I've said even we just brought on a new staff member this week, and just an absolutely dynamic personality. She worked in the medical field, but not in the eye care field. But by yesterday, she was already pretty well versed on a lot of the skills. And I've said to her managers, when we look in the hiring process, you can't train a personality, you can train a skill.
That is true.
So hire the personality, train the skill. She was someone we got to talking. I was talking to a patient about, he does surfing. She said, oh, I've done that. And so what else do you do? She said, well, I sing and I dance. And I said, well, we're going to have to sing first one time. And she breaks out and singing the song Hallelujah right there.
Oh my gosh.
And she's really good.
Wow.
She's really good. But I looked, I said, that's who I want representing our practice is to look at that. And the other is to empower people that you work with to treat it as their business. Because one time we had a staff meeting and I said, if you don't mind me going off on a little bit of a tangent, I said, who's our competition? And they thought around, mentioned some doctors in the area. I said, let me give you a different slant on this. We have no competition, not because we're better than everyone else, but we individually and collectively can only be found here. So if we individually and collectively do the best job possible to exceed the needs and expectations of our patients, they have no choice but to come here. And I have patients that come from great distances, and I don't know if clinically how I rank compared to other doctors in the area, but I know in terms of the relationship of how people feel, and that's what they come back for. I have two associates. I have a partner and associate. I'm older than the two of them put together. One of them, my partner, Dr. Goldberg, has been my patient since she was 8 years old.
Oh my gosh.
But I say to them all the time, I point to the equipment. I say, if you focus on this, you will burn out. If you focus on this, you never will.
I think that advice right there, I think is huge for people to understand of just that right there. Where is your focus, right? Because just as you said, people burn out all the time and then they get to this point and they're like, what am I doing? What am I doing anymore? And they burnt out thinking it's the thing, right? It's the profession, it's the whatever it is. But I think it's because they forgot along the way to focus on something different.
And there's so many times when I've gone into businesses, particularly if it's a service field, and you see someone has a dour expression and they don't seem enthusiastic, and I'm so tempted to say to them, do you remember the day you got offered the job, how that felt? Maybe you need to bottle that up and open the bottle every now and then. But if you're focused on the task, then things become mundane. I had that happen once where when I was getting my medical training, there was a surgeon. I said, kind of sheepishly, any chance I could ever come in and watch surgery? He said, oh my God, that would be so cool. This gets so boring. I'm thinking, you do surgery, how could that be boring? But anything repetitive can become mundane. But for me, it never is, because it's all about the engagement and the directions that conversations go. I know that on my schedule, I can increase the number of patients I see a day. I'm booked out far enough to be able to legitimately do that. And it would rob me of the thing that keeps me going back to work every day. And that's the connection and the things that are shared and the great stories and moments that will be with me forever. I feel unbelievably blessed for what I've been able to do for almost 40 years.
That is it's just incredible. I love hearing that, because especially in the medical field, it seems like, that little time we get usually gets shorter and shorter and shorter. And for you to maintain the integrity, and it's really, it's which is a great thing. It's selfishly about you and what you need. But I think so many of us really need to really understand what do I need? What do I need to fill me up? And it got me thinking as you were talking about, being younger, and here you were, managing concerts and you're pre-med. And I've always thought, we ask children as they're growing up, what do you want to be when you grow up? And that's not really the question I think that people want the answer to. They are asking, what do you want to do? Right? Which I think is part of the fallacy, not only in the question, but I think what if we focused on the kids asking the question is, what excites you?
Exactly.
Right? And start fostering that. And we might end up with adults that are following the excitement and the fun and the joy of whatever it is, the human connection, whatever it is that they love, instead of what do you do? Because they can do things, and those things might change, and that's okay, right?
It's interesting because in Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, the why is not to make money. That's a result, he says. And the why is not doing eye exams. And he gives lots of really good examples. He mentions Apple, for example. Apple's why is not to make new phones and new products. Apple is a disruptor. Right. Apple's goal is to change the way we do things in life. There are a lot of examples like that. So if you understand what it is that motivates you, what would really excite you to do?
And it might not be like you said, it might not be being an eye doctor, right? It might not be the profession itself. That seems interesting, and you enjoy it, and you might have a talent for it. And then within that, right, within that framework of that, what fills you up? That part of it. We never spend any time. I feel like you go to college, you don't spend time on, well, what do you love to do about it, right?
It's to be enthusiastic, and that's feedback that I get frequently. But it's easy to be enthusiastic when you love what you're doing. But the eye exam is the vehicle that allows me to do what I love, and that's connecting and relationships and getting to know people when they come in and asking, "Hey, how was your trip last summer?" Or how was your son's graduation? Because I know the family, and where I knew that when I charted my way backwards. I was in lovely North Philadelphia. I grew up in a small town called Brooklyn, New York, but my family moved out. Small town, yes. Maybe you've heard of it.
Yeah, I think I have.
Came out to Arizona, but I had the opportunity to get my medical training back in Philadelphia at a school at that time was considered the top clinical school in the country. I was going to be able to see about 1,000 patients before I graduated. So I felt if I get in there, I'm going. Well, then I wound up in North Philadelphia looking out the window say, what am I doing here? I could have been in Southern California. But anytime I allowed myself to sort of fantasize and think the future, what do I see when I think about graduating and being in practice? What came to mind was always the same thing. It was always walking in the room and looking at someone and saying, Christina, how are things going? How's your podcast doing?
That's
What's
incredible.
New? Is to have that, to know that I could walk in and I know these people already. And every fantasy took me there. And I realized that was what my priority was. And again, when I connected with understanding what motivates me, I was able to look back and say, even then, I knew what it is that I was looking for out of this and what my objective was going to be.
That's so cool. I love that because I think everybody is searching for how do I make it on the other side of this 180, and to have somebody who now you've like dissected your life, right? And like, what was it? Going back, like how did we get here? And to be able to identify that is what it is. And even if you're 60 years old at this point, you can still
67.
do that. I didn't mean you. But thank you for telling me. Yeah. Now I know. A very young 67. And good, because you have a long time until you retire.
We need to get you a better eye doctor so you can see better.
No. But what's amazing, though, is you could be 60, 70 years old, and you can still now go back to your life and say, oh, wow, maybe I didn't have that. I was focused on the wrong thing. But now I can change things. It doesn't matter what age you are, right? If you were 20, you could tell somebody at 20, here's what you really should do. Here's what you should focus on. But I think people get to a certain age, maybe it's in their 40s or 50s, and they feel like, I just got to tough it out for the next 6 years, 20 years, whatever. And I don't think that's what they should do.
For so long, I had I would talk to young patients about what their aspirations are. And I would tell them, I can't tell you how many patients I see that Thursday night's pretty good because Friday's coming. But
Right.
by Sunday afternoon, they're already miserable because Monday's coming. And I said, find something you love and find the opportunity there because you're going to spend a lot of hours doing it. So find something you feel passionate about doing because it's, I think maybe the millennials have it right in some respects. I mean, they get a lot of bad rap about the fact of, participation.
Right.
I've been here a year, I haven't done anything, but don't I get a promotion, a raise?
No, I absolutely agree with you. I've said this about millennials for years because I do think that they have something right. They want to be happy first.
They want a balance in their lives.
Right.
But when you bring up someone maybe in their 40s, 50s or beyond, there often is that feeling like, okay, I'm on autopilot now. I just have to coast my way until retirement is a mistake because I've made a commitment to myself, and I brought this up many times in talking to staff members. I want to find better ways for the way we do things till the day I retire. And I love change. I love, we're listed as an early adapter with a lot of the companies. Something new comes out, they're coming to us. At the same time, though, I embrace new technology, new opportunities, but I still like our office motto is where modern technology meets old-fashioned care.
Oh,
and
it's
for
so
anyone
true.
old enough
It
to
is
remember
so true.
the Marcus Welby days of doing that. And people call me, they have my cell phone number, and I've gone to people's homes and dropped things off, and not in a boastful way, but because that's just the way I practice. But I find ironic in service fields how many companies have an automated phone system.
Right.
And, we think of the great lies we're told, like the check is in the mail and I'm from your government, I'm here to help you. I added two more to that, and that is that for your convenience, we've
yes.
implemented. And I think, no, you didn't do it for my convenience, you did it for yours.
For yours, yeah.
And secondly, please listen to all the options as they've recently changed.
That drives me crazy.
And I'm waiting to see the person that picks up, that makes a call and they hear that recording and say, yay, I get to go through and hear all these options. So I've said in my office and made a commitment, we want to be the first on a lot of innovative things because I love change and I love new opportunities and ways we can do things better. And I want to be the last doctor standing to have an automated phone system. If it's a service field, people want to speak to a human being.
They really do.
And it's become the exception.
You talk about change, and this is actually something that I talk about all the time. And I wish people would embrace change, or if we could find a way to help people embrace change, because I think people fear change sometimes more than they embrace change. And I am one of those people who loves change. Probably maybe to my husband, he might think I like change a little too much, but I do. I really embrace it. I love doing something new. I love challenging myself. I can't imagine sitting in a job, in a chair, in a little cubicle for 40 years in a row. I think I would go insane. And so I think what happens though is people get so nervous about change that they think that the change is going to be more difficult than the pain that they are currently in, sitting in that chair that they despise.
One of the challenges in leadership is how do you deal with people that are going to look at change in different ways? Those that are excited, those that are willing to consider, and those that are resistant. And very briefly, there's a great parable about mountain climbers. There are three types of mountain climbers. There are the quitters. They look at the mountain and say, no way.
That might be me.
There are the campers, those that get to a certain level say, okay, that's far enough. And then there are the climbers. And the climbers are the one that say, no, there's more to go. But the problem with the climbers is two things. As they go up, they're facing the elements more. They're above the tree line and wind and cold and everything else. And the second thing is you have all the campers below them pulling them by the ankle, say, what are you doing? Are you nuts? So it's really hard to be a climber.
Right.
But in doing it is to recognize who you have. As an example of understanding your audience, when I walk in to see a patient, I say, hey, how you doing? And they say, well, I can't see. It's 16.27 inches. I'm not asking how their weekend was. I've understood this is someone who's bottom line, get to the point.
Right.
But with someone else, how you doing? They say, oh, great, we just took a trip. I'm going to engage in that conversation. Well, the same thing can be done when it comes to change as far as the people you work with, is to recognize how they are motivated, how they look at change, and be able to accommodate that. So those that are resistant, you maybe break it down into smaller sections, and you talk about what they feel about it and what they want out of it. And you say, well, this change is going to allow us to do this. How does that resonate with what you do. Well, that would be really good. Well, great. It's right in the program. It's right in the software. It's right in the new technology. And then for those that are enthusiastic, let them be the cheerleaders and the ambassadors for it. But when we have an expectation that one size fits all, whether our response or whether what we expect from others, often will lead to more inertia, more challenges, and less likely to adapt to those changes.
That's true.
It's hard for people that look at change as a wonderful opportunity to understand what it's like when you look at it and say, I like the way we do it.
Right.
But when you talk about people, one of my favorite lines is, we've always done it this way.
Yes.
Or if it ain't broke, don't break
fix
it.
Yeah.
Don't fix it. Yeah. And I actually wrote a journal article many years ago, and it wound up being the cover article for this journal. Said if it ain't broke, break it.
Oh.
To look at it and be the change, to embrace it and see where it takes you, because then there are no failures. Because even if you go and you learn that maybe that didn't work, you've also learned how you might be able to modify it that it might work in your situation. But to be able to enlist the people around you to do that, to be able to get them excited about what they can, but to be mindful of people have different approaches to it.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, I think I've experienced it even in our family, the gamut, right? Everything from I despise change. I'm not changing. I'm digging my heels in, right? So then there's me who's like, change.
Here we go. Yeah.
Oh, my schedule changed. Great. It's interesting. And I think too, and you said the word feeling. I'm one of those people who really believes in that you have to feel it. You really have to feel it, and maybe helping people feel the change as being good. Like, well, what would it feel like if you did something different, but it felt good? Because they think change is scary and change is fearful. But maybe opening their eyes and asking the question, well, what would change, if the change were exciting, what would that feel like to you, right? What would that mean to you? What would be happening if that felt good?
It's an interesting comment because it actually connects to what you said earlier with children. What do you feel passionate about? What would you like to do? What excites you?
Right.
Well, if we take that as a continuum and later on saying when it comes to someone who's already in their career, if we were looking at an opportunity, how would that feel to you? And what would excite you about that? It's that same continuum is to get people in touch with what their core values are and what their objectives are. And again, the core value is not to do accounting. The core value is how do I help people have financial security?
Right.
And you could
educate
do that
them
or educate.
Right.
Yeah. And I one of my degrees is in education. So I look at everything from an educator's point of view, even the way I do an eye exam. It's not enough that I can help you to see better. I also want you to leave knowing more so you know what the options are. It also builds more of a collaborative effort between doctor and patient if there's an understanding. Here's what I'm recommending and here's why.
Right.
But too often I've seen patients, and I know it happens to everyone, about, well, why did you do that? Why were you put on that medication? Why were you prescribed that? I don't know. The doctor told me I need to.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. I don't know. They said that I needed it. Okay.
But if you can go ahead and explain, I'm doing this because, then you're more likely to be compliant with the recommendations and more likely to understand it and be a better partner going forward in their care.
And a great example of that is I have a teen who's just starting to drive that was in to see you the other day, and you had the best advice and got buy-in, right? Because you were saying, well, it's really important you as a new driver, right? You have so many new stimulus around you. You need every opportunity to see the best that you possibly can. Yeah, and I thought that was so cool.
Well, it's one that the two groups of people I treat differently are competitive athletes and 16-year-olds. Because good enough vision is not good enough. And what I say, and as you heard, is what we want to do is make sure you're getting all the visual information as quickly and efficiently as possible to make up for what you lack in experience. Right. You can make up in getting that information so you can make good driving decisions. So it's really critical. Even when I see kids that are 13, 14, that maybe could benefit from a mild prescription, I'll say, you're okay now. We don't have to do anything. Now, in a couple of years, this conversation's going to change.
Right.
Because once you're talking about driving, we're not talking about vision you can get by with. We're talking about optimizing your vision for the safety of you and everyone else on the road around you.
And it makes them feel like, oh, wait, I'm in when I'm in this car, right? I do want to feel like that. I want to know with certainty that I can see. And it gets buy-in, which again goes back to the feeling and working with people, whether it's, even if it's your boss, right? Is getting people to really connect on that feeling level. And then I think that human connection really kicks in, and people can be inspired and create change and really create their 180 in their experience. I mean, on a dime sometimes, just because of the way that they're communicating with people.
Yeah, we as in training in medicine is very much looked at. It's supposed to be clinical. It's black and white. It's to be totally objective. And what I have found in my career is people don't want objectivity. They want subjectivity. What would you do if you were me? What would you be advising if it was your mother or your family member?
I've asked that question now that you say that. Yep.
And it's a really great way to connect, because then you make it personal. And I try to do that with that. It's always, I think the best way you can do it, if you can get people on an emotional level, going back to the story about someone who works and they forget what it felt like the day they got offered the job. If they were able to connect on an emotional level of what the job provides them besides a way to pay their bills, is what will motivate them. Because if you think about it, you get a raise, you're excited for a short period of time, and then somehow you find a way to spend more money so you still have the same amount at the end of the end of the month. But it's the appreciation, it's the sense of value, it's the sense of purpose, it's a sense of understanding your why. I make a point to say thank you to everyone in the office at the end of the day, because although everyone wants to make a healthy living and they want to be able to support themselves, a sense of appreciation for a job well done goes a long way too.
Oh, it absolutely does. I mean, it really, again, it goes back to the feeling. Then they want to come in tomorrow and get that same feeling, because they might also not be appreciated in other aspects of their life, but they know when they come into your office that you fully appreciate them as a human being, right?
My favorite sound in my office is laughter in the hallway.
Oh, I love that. I used to get in trouble at work for laughing too much. Shocking.
It's yeah, what a surprise. Yeah, with you.
Yeah, I know.
That's my favorite part, because frequently patients say, "Boy, you guys have fun." And what I always say to them is, "We take your eyes seriously. We don't take life seriously."
Oh, I like that.
So when we look at it, if I'm in the exam room with you, I'm counting on the fact that everyone else in the office is buying into. I see myself as being more the navigator.
Okay.
A compass. I'm going to point the direction we want to go, but I have to entrust the people that I work with to buy into that philosophy, whether they're answering the phone, whether they're pre-testing or taking care of them after the fact, is to be able to provide the understanding of where we're trying to go and to earn their buy-in to that, so that they don't burn out and so that they're representing things in the way that fits with it. And it's great when you're surrounded by people that allow you to be able to sit doing the task you're designed to, which would be for an eye exam, and not have to worry about what's going on the rest of the office, because I know they're managing it and staying true to whatever our philosophy is.
Well, and that right there just sparked, I believe you had talked about before, and it kind of goes on the opposite side as well, of when you're starting out. And even if you're creating a company or you're creating this whole new life for yourself, you had some advice about the people around you and your success because of the people around you. Yeah,
because I often say the most important person in our office is the person at the front desk. Because if they don't do a good job in a patient calling and saying, I'm interested in, people don't usually wake up in the morning and say, I have nothing to do today. Let me find out how much eye exams are going for these days. They're usually calling and they're motivated and they're looking for a place for connection. And I remember years ago when people used to use a thing called a pen and a paper.
Oh, I think I've heard of that.
Yeah, I don't know if they exist anymore. But I'd see notes and they'd come in with, and I'd see a number. Sometimes it would be there and they put what time the appointment was, but sometimes I've seen notes say nice person, a check mark or a plus sign,
that's
something
so cool.
that it can sense that, what does that motivate someone to do it? And so that person's the most important person, because if they don't do a good job, I may not see the patient. If they don't do a good job when the patient's leaving, I may not see them again. But what happens when we talk about changing our hats from consumer to provider is that often we forget what it feels like to wear the other hat.
Yeah.
So what do we hear so often is that we encounter people who can tell us very clearly what they're not going to do for us.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I'll give you two quick examples. Patient calls my office and wants an appointment. And the front desk person says, I'm really sorry, we can't see you until a week from Thursday at 3. Or the flip side is, hey, we have an appointment a week from Thursday at 3.
No, a very different feel.
And we're talking about the same appointment. If, for example, one of the big areas, of course, in medicine has to do with insurance coverage. If we're not a provider, we can say, no, we're not a provider on that plan. You need to file and you need to get reimbursement and you need to deal with the insurance company. As opposed to saying, while we're not a provider, we're going to furnish you with all the documentation you need to maximize your reimbursement.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, the person who's at our front desk, who I think the world of, I said this at a meeting and she actually wrote it down and put it on a Post-it note on a computer and said, I said, it's a very simple philosophy. The answer is yes. What's the question? I said, because there's always something you can do.
Right.
So find the things that you can do for people to help, and rather than running resistance.
I used to do that with my kid. I wasn't a big no fan, just because toddlers end up taking that and going, no. It was more about that. It wasn't me allowing, this little human to take over my house, but it was the redirecting, like, oh, hey, look over here. You know what I mean? It's that same feeling like, yes, isn't this great? Instead of, it just creates this starting point. This, again, it opens the communication versus closing.
Well, whether you're running a business or you're a parent, it's not a matter of manipulation. It's a matter of capitalization. And I'm going to capitalize on the opportunity to take someone's idea and build on it. So rather than someone who comes up with a thought of saying, no, we've tried that, it didn't work, or no, I don't think that's a good idea. Say, you bring up a really interesting point and find the segment of it that has promise.
I love that
and say,
so
let's go with that. How about if we took your idea and tried this with it?
Yes.
Because when you shoot someone down, there are two things that they are destined to do the rest of the meeting. One is they're not going to open their mouth again.
That's for sure.
And two, they're going to wait for an opportunity for you to open your mouth and shoot you down.
Absolutely.
So we've just now lost all of that good juju, all of that good energy that's going toward being creative. And so look at it. There's always a way, whether you're a parent, when you recognize, I know better than my toddler, so I need to focus, get them going this direction. And it's not saying you should treat your fellow workers as children, but to recognize as a leader, if you know where you want to go, is to say, there's a lot of good in what you just suggested.
Right.
Let's build on that.
Even to the point of, I'm just glad you spoke up, right? Even if you hated every part of what they said, but the fact that if you don't find something, right? If you don't find something, you've closed the communication. And I could literally talk to you all day long. And you're going to have to come back because I think we have some more subjects. They're already rolling in my head. But I think for all of the people out there that really want to pull their 180 and to live a life the way that you have lived and continue to live, and it just gets better and better, right?
It does.
Where would be a good starting point for them? What do you think they should focus on? What would help them, do you think?
That's a great question. First, I gave you the example of understanding my why, and I don't want to be a broken record about it, but it really helps to crystallize, because when you look down the road at a goal, if our goal is to get from point A to point B, all we have to do is keep an eye at point B and see are we getting closer. What we sometimes tend to do is we look at our feet. And when you look at your feet too long, sometimes you look up and suddenly say, where am I?
Where am I?
So it's to figure out your why and figure out where it is you want to go and make sure everything you're doing is moving in that direction. If it doesn't, you either need to reconfigure your plan or you need to marginalize that idea because it doesn't take me in the direction I want. So I think
it doesn't fit.
It doesn't fit. Yeah, it doesn't fit the narrative, doesn't fit what my objective is, and it would not be time well spent. So one would be to understand your why. I understood mine retrospectively, but I was still able to go back and realize I had lived that by charting the course of my career.
Right.
And the second thing is that, there's this presumption that doctors know everything. Well, we're lousy business people typically. But the key is, I think that where I proved that I was the smartest person I could be was when I surrounded myself with people who were better than me in areas that weren't my strengths. So and then try to learn from them. With open communication, but empower them to do it, recognize their expertise, capitalize on that, and then try to learn from that. So one of the things you say all the time is our ego is left in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Our objective is what we want to do, and let's do that as enthusiastically, as collaboratively, and with leaving the ego out of it.
And then you also build a community of people that you enjoy, right? By doing that, right?
Absolutely. But whether it be the family, our office family, whether it be our family of patients, people connect with that. And that's why they come back.
And believe me, my entire family goes to see him. And I don't know if sometimes I'm like, is it time yet for our eye exams? I mean, it's very weird. Who says that? I don't know. Usually it's, I have to go to the dentist. I have to go get my eyes done. It's like, you know who I get to see today? That's what I say to my kid all the time. Do you know who I get to see today? Because it just really has that feeling.
Well, that means the world to me, because that is absolutely the core of what it is that's important to me. And I feel the same way. I look at a schedule and I see names. I see Christina's name on it. I look forward to seeing her. I wonder where our conversation will go today.
Oh, that's so cool.
So it's as rewarding for me as what you just described. But I appreciate you saying that. When I was first in practice, I'd have patients that saw the doctor's name. They retired and said, I used to see Dr. So-and-so. He's one of the best. And I would say to them, can you tell me where the list is and how do I sign up? Because how do we categorize what someone's one of the best? We don't know what their grades were, but it's always comes down to the theme that you've mentioned many times during our discussion. How do people feel? And if people feel cared for, listened to, valued, that's going to be the thing that's going to elevate the view of the person providing that business or service.
Right.
If you care about me, I'm going to give you credibility that you're good at what you do, because I feel good about the care I receive.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you so much for being with me today. And if anyone wants to get a hold of you, I know that you can be located on your website, drmyeyes.net.
Yes.
Is there any other a place that would be best?
Well, we do have a Facebook page, and our office phone number. And if people listen and they're interested in talking, they could call my office, leave me a message. I love the opportunity to engage with people who have live minds and a lot of enthusiasm. So they could my office, 480-513-3937, 513-EYES, EYES.
Oh, that's easy.
So that if anyone wants to call and just leave a message, say, hey, I heard the podcast and have a question, or, they can ask for my email address. And I love just connecting with people and the opportunity to share. I learn as much as I'm able to offer in return.
I highly recommend it. Even if you get to see the pictures on his walls, which I'm not even going to start that. We'll talk about that next time. Okay. So thank you so much for joining me, and let's discover what's ultimately possible for you and how to pull your ultimate 180. Follow me on my website, ultimate180.com, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your shows.